I'm Oren and I'm a sound designer for games. In this video I've teamed up with Rock the Speakerbox again to show off their latest library Machina, which is made for designing small to medium sized robots. To showcase this, I've decided to redesign a few machines from Horizon Forbidden West, which will allow me to use the mech sounds as they are at the library, and to experiment with how well they take extreme processing. As always, I want to thank Rock the Speakerbox for sending this over to me, and just like last time, if you want to pick up the library yourself, I have an affiliate link in the description and a discount code. So let's get into the redesign. First, for the Clawstrider, I started out by building the base of the machine's movement, mainly the footsteps and little mechanical details in between the main actions. For the first part of the footstep, I'm using the large stand extend asset, and this drill to mimic the kind of pneumatics in the leg mechanism. For the foot hitting the floor, I'm layering this jack bump and large metal rattle asset, slightly offset to imitate different areas of the foot hitting the ground. Then for the more general mech movement accompanying the footsteps, I have this car seat rattle, which has this really nice heavy clicky quality that I'm complementing with this slightly lighter and more noisy power tool recording, as well as these designed mech sounds, which are the equipped emulation, system unfold and module lock assets, which fill out the highs a bit more and have some nice clangy tonal bits to them that poke out in the mix sometimes. Overall, I wanted the Clawstrider to sound heavier and more dangerous than the Leaplasher, and feel more rough as well, like a killing machine that was a bit more functional and less elegant. Here's how the mech layers sound together, with just some EQ boosting the low mint on the footsteps and cutting the sub on everything. Next, for the vocalizations, I used that car seat rattle again because it had this really nice growly sound that instantly made me think of creature calls when I first heard it, as well as this servo sharp movement which adds a higher tonal layer. I'm splitting these into two groups, with one for the car seat recordings that are just the low growly layer with some denoising and pitch shifting that's being automated. Then the main screamy sound is coming from the higher car seat recordings and this servo, which I just have some tremolo on. They're being run through Echo Boy with a super short 3 millisecond delay to give them a pretty high digital sounding tone. That's then being run through Little Alter Boy, pitching and formant shifting them up really far, which I usually don't like doing with this plugin because it makes stuff sound like artifacty and robotic, but this time that's exactly what I want. Then another instance of Alter Boy that's mixed in like 60% to put it a bit higher up and fill out the frequencies of the sound a bit more. I'm also automating the pitch of both layers to make it follow the movement of the machine a bit more and sound more interesting. On the whole vocal stack, I have a super harsh auto pitch, which is just keeping the pitch a bit more consistent. It's mainly there to make it just sound a bit more robotic. Then more denoising, just getting rid of some noisy artifacts. Two convolvers, one of a guitar cab, which is making it sound like it's kind of coming from a speaker rather than a real animal, and this metal grinding one, which is adding some harshness and another tone on top of the other ones. Multipass here is a patch that I made that's just adjusting the dynamic shape of different frequency bands, so bringing up the highs and boosting their transients, and stopping the low end from sticking around too much when it's not needed. Then just compression, EQ, limiting, reverb to put it in a space and glue the layers together a bit more. So here's the final result. Now for the fire. Most of this is coming from just one effects chain I made, where I'm taking interesting and noisy source with a lot of movement and really heavily distorting it. Here I'm using some of the designed impacts, that car seat rattle again, and some air bursts. Then I'm exporting those out onto a new track and layering them up at different pitches, usually bringing them down in pitch quite a lot, so you hear more of the individual crackles from the distortion. Then from there, I'm just using Spin Tracer and Filter Freak pretty much, with Spin Tracer on the race car preset, so it's super dynamic and has loads of filter and pitch movement. Then Filter Freak is just giving it more movement by moving a bandpass around at like 60% wet, so it's a bit more dynamic and whooshy and almost a bit phasery. Then I have a container that just has neutron and a clipper that's boosting the transients really hard, so that when I'm making impacts for the design, I can just turn this on, set spin tracer to automatic mode so it's moving around on its own, and just start the playhead at random points on the waveform to get cool distorted impacts. So putting this into the actual design, I'm layering some whooshes with some source where I've just left spin tracer in one place to get some more subtle constant fire sounds. And arrange them like this to match the movement of the fire in the clip. Then crunching up a bit more with some subsynth and destructor, then using this dynamic EQ to duck the main frequencies of the vocalizations because it was smothering them a bit. Plus some general EQ and sidechaining it to the impacts, which are mainly just those fire impacts I mentioned earlier, layered with some designed ones from the library and some air bursts to give it a kind of interesting cadence. Finally, for the fire sounds, I'm layering some of these designed bot damage assets with a flanger as a build-up for the big fire burst, then pitching them up over time so it sounds like almost something inside the machine that's sparking to try and ignite the fire. Then this drone damage designed asset had a really nice noisy whoosh to it that made a nice background for the more clicky fire stuff I designed. I'm taking out the tonality with M ratio, then distorting it after a reverb so it gets this nice crunchy noisy tail that fits behind the sustain of the fire burst. So altogether, the fire stuff sounds like this. Then with some light mastering, the whole Clawstrider clip sounds like this. For the Leaplasher, I wanted it to feel a lot more tight and nimble, so the mech layers are a bit more tonal and clicky. For the jump, I have this snap lock, VCR mech and servo recordings. Then the landing is more VCR and cassette stuff, with smaller impacts from this designed artificial attitude asset. Then the extra mech sounds are just from this liquid glitch designed asset and jack clicks, with the designed process snap and car seat lock as a little riser for this jump. So with some similar processing to Clawstrider, here's the whole mech folder together. For the vocalizations here, I'm using a different technique to get a smaller, slightly less scary sound for the Leaplasher by gluing a load of servo movements together and playing them back in Serum 2's granular oscillator, being frequency modulated by a different servo asset for some more complex tones. Then frequency shifting the whole thing up between 200 and 300 Hz, so it gets kind of whiny and high pitched. Then I'm layering it with the tails from this dull electric snap asset and putting everything through some more effects. Mostly similar stuff to the other vocalizations like convolution, reverb, compression, but I also have this tremolo patch that I made in Snapheat that has the amount and speed of the tremolo linked to the incoming signal volume, so you get some more movement across the sound. Here's how the vocalizations sound all together. For the electricity sounds here, I'm using about half my own design stuff and half assets straight from the library, because there's a load of great electricity assets in here that work super well for these kind of attack and charging sounds. For the more crackly layers, I have this granular whoosh phase plant patch that I use for source creation a lot. I put a few designed and airburst assets in, and put them through with some ring mod set to the bandpass noise modulator and with the frequency tied to the envelope, so it gets more sparse and less intense in the tail, alongside some compression and mixing in a pitch shifter slightly to give it some more depth. Then shaper table at the end has the wavetable position tied to the envelope as well for more movement and to make it super aggressive and punchy for transients. So in the end, the patch sounds like this. I also have this similar patch that's a bit less transient focused and aggressive. I'm running some ambience recordings through here that are a bit more neutral and constant. And using less shaper table, so I get some more gentle crackles to use for the tails. I then ended up taking those crackles and putting them back through another instance of this sampler with some vocoder to get these classic kind of low-end whooshes that I can use to broaden the sound of the electricity and get some more weight in there. So the stuff I designed sounds like this when layered on the timeline. For the library assets here, I'm using these bot damage crackles again with a flanger to bulk out the tails and give it some tonality. As well as these spectral denoise ring assets that poke through the mix and have this nice metallic but synthetic sound to them. I then have these crackling burst and fast strike assets, filling out some more noise in the impacts that's more fizzy and full than the crackly tails. And some impacts from the Iron Fist, large rattling metal, and mechanical metal hit assets with some subsynths to beef them up. So altogether, the electricity stuff sounds like this. And with some light mastering, the Leaplasher sounds like this altogether. Now for the review. I definitely think that the library achieves what it sets out to do, and I really like that a lot of the composite design sounds are sorted into different distinct robots with their own sound and their own whole set of assets, so that if you were using these in a game or film, you could use a set of sounds across one character that were all consistent. Like the Roverbot, which has assets like deployed, malfunction, damaged, power on, power off, and a few more as well. The abstract design mech stuff is also really good for just easily dropping it into a design and adding more detail, making it sound more sci-fi without really having to spend loads more time, like you saw me do a bit in this design. And I really appreciate that a lot of the time, Rock the Speakerbox assets have a load of really cool, unique details at different parts of the asset. So sometimes I'll find myself using like the tail from the sound for one thing, and the start for another, and the kind of body for another thing, and they'll kind of fit in different bits of the design. You kind of saw me do that in this design as well. I do think that there could be more actual vocalization sounds in the library, similar to the ones I made, maybe less like animal focused, but I do think that using the same set of original recordings and synths, you could make some kind of voices for the robots and have them as potentially their own assets rather than baked into the composite ones. Similarly, I think some more emotionally driven sounds for the robots could be good, like them getting alerted or aggravated or things like that. More kind of character moments. But I do understand if the purpose of the library is to design more kind of functional robots and not robot characters, if that makes sense. But as you saw me do here, it's pretty easy to take the sounds, turn them into whatever you want, and build your own kind of aesthetic for one robot in the way that I've done here. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you found some of it useful. Thanks for watching.